So now let's run two more chi-square tests, and we'll also interpret the percentages when we do the output. So if you look on output number 19 under independent practice, they're still from the year 8 ANOVA chi-square core database. And the first one says, are special education students and race of the student independent of one another? So that word independent tells me I am instantly independent of one another. I'm going to run a chi-square. The other way to know that, even if I didn't say that word independent, if you looked at your two variables, special education, they're both dichotomous. You either have a disability and you're served in special education, or you're in regular education programs. There's no real order to that. And then race, in this case, I have broken it down into two different ways to think about race, but the variable chosen in this analysis is just simply white, non-white. Again, no order to that. So we're going to go up to analysis, descriptive statistics. We're going to go down to crosstab. Let's just reset everything. And I ask if special education which is called special ed, reg ed, is what you'll see. We're going to go ahead and put that in the row. If that is independent from race, ethnicity, and I'm using the one ethnicity CD, which just simply says minority or Caucasian, I'm going to go over to my cells because I want to see both rows and column percentages. And I'm going to go over to statistics, and I actually want to know if these two things are independent of one another. So I'm going to click on a chi-square, continue, OK, and run. So the first table that you see is simply descriptive statistics. So if I were to ask you, of all Caucasian students, what percentage were in special education? You would start with the column total. Of all Caucasians, what percentage are special education? And you would say 16.2%. If I said of all minority students, what percentage are in regular education? You would start with the minority in column, go down to the row, and you would say 82.7%. If I said what of all special education students, what percentage are minority? We would look in our row totals. Of all special education students, what percentage are minority? 60.1%, which is simply 152 out of the 253. So of all special education students, 60.1% are minority, and 39.9% are Caucasian. That may or may not be two variables that interact. It could be that 60% of the district is minority and 40% of the district is white. Therefore, you're just equally likely to be placed in special ed. However, that's not the case. So let's go down to the chi-square and see if those are independent. Pearson's chi-square, the chi-square value is 0.300. The significance value is 0.584. That's not less than 0.05. So the answer to the question is race and special education are independent of one another. In other words, you're not more likely to be placed in special education classes in this district if you're non-white. That's inconsistent with national data that points to the disproportionality of non-white students in special education programs. But in this case, this makes perfect sense because while it looks like of all special education students, 60% are minority and only 40% are white, if you just looked at those two numbers, you would say, well, you're more likely to be in special ed if you're minority. However, if you go down and you look at the total percentage of students in the entire district, 59% are minority. So 59% of the whole district's minority, only 60% of the districts are in special education. Those two numbers are basically the same. So you are no more likely to be in special education classes if you're white or non-white, and therefore the chi-square is consistent with that. It is not less than 0.05. So let's run the second independent one. And the question that I would ask you here is, are guardianship and eligibility for free reduced lunch independent of one another? So we're going to go to descriptive statistics, and that keyword independent of one another tells me it's a crosstab. I want to go ahead and reset this, and I'm going to find guardianship, make that the row, and I'm going to find the lunch indicator, free reduced lunch, and I'm going to make that the column. Because I've reset it, I want to go back over to my cells and I want to see the column and row percentages again. And I want to see the statistic chi-square. And all I need to do is OK. So in this particular case, I have what's called a 4x3 crosstab. I've got 4 different groups that you can be in under the indicator, lunch indicator. And they are actually in order. Certified free actually means you're eligible for governmental assistance programs such as food stamps, the lowest income, free or temporary free lunch, reduced price lunch, and paid lunch. So higher income to lower income, but that's 4 different groups. And then guardianship, the student either lives with both parents, a single parent, or other guardianship, which is you're a ward of the state or in custody of a grandparent, for example. So I have a 4x3 crosstab. So if I said to you, again, here's my row totals adding up to 100, here's my column totals. If I scroll down a little bit further, they add up to 100 going down. 79.3 plus 19.8 plus 0.9, 100%. So I might say to you, of all students who qualify for free or temporary free lunch, what percentage live in single parent homes? Of all students who qualify for free reduced lunch, so I find the free reduced lunch column, and I go down to the single parent row, I look at the column total, and I know that it's 31.8% of all free reduced lunch students live in single parent homes. If I wanted to give you a row question, I might say, of all students who are living with other guardians, what percentage qualify for certified free lunch? I now am in the row total of all other guardianships. I move across to certified free, and I see that 36.1% of all students living with other guardians qualify for certified free lunch. Where did I get that 36.1%? There are 36 students who live in other guardianships. 13 of those 36, or 36.1%, are also eligible for certified free lunch. So that's just descriptive statistics. Now I really want to know, are lunch indicator and guardianship independent of one another? In other words, if you live in a different family structure, meaning both parents, single parent, or other guardianship, does that affect your income level as assessed by your eligibility for a certain level of lunch programs? So we'll scroll down and we'll look at our chi-square. And again, there's really two numbers that matter. There's my chi-square value, 116.311. The significance value is less than 0.000. So guardianship and lunch are not independent of one another. In other words, I want to now go up and look back at the chart and see what the differences are. If I live in a two-parent home, only 8.4% of students who live in two-parent homes qualify for the lowest income level that makes them eligible for certified free lunch. So of all students in two-parent homes, 8.4%. In single-parent homes, 26.1%. In other guardianships, 36.1%. So you are much less likely to qualify for different lunches that are supported with some supplemental contribution from the federal level if you live in both parent home. If you are with another guardian, and I go across, only 11% of other guardians qualify for paid lunch, while 47.2% qualify for free or temporary free lunch, and 36.1% qualify for certified. So as we move down from both parent to single parent to other guardianship, you become more likely to qualify for more support for lunch programs. That's what a chi-square is. It simply tells me that two categorical variables are not independent of one another. When they're not independent, you have a chi-square value less than 0.005, 0.05 less than 0.05, and so then you look at the values in each of the cells and you see which group is more likely, what's causing this difference, what's causing these two variables to be independent of one another.